Timon. I'm one of the commission. I'm the commission chairman, and I will welcome you today. And I will tell a little bit about the speakers, about the moderator, so we can have a nice evening together. Because it's really nice to talk about what's inner peace, especially in this world of chaos where we are in today. And we're living in a world full of chaos, and where we are we became a ball on like this field with all the big power balls in the world. So it's nice to think about how can we remain this inner peace even with all the stress and stuff like that. So it's nice to have some speakers today with us. First of all, we have Lotte Asveld. She is a professor at the TU, and she is doing ethics in, for example, bio engineering. So she is one of the ethics professors in a group of where they are creating a synthetic cell. So it's really nice to have her here. So she can definitely enlighten us with some ethics parts about this inner peace. So how can we think about it and how will we do it? She studied in Maastricht, if I'm correct. So she will help us today, and she will go in debate with Nico. And Nico is he describes himself as a teacher. He really likes to think about the big questions in life. And you may know him from the Ongelooflijke. He talked about Thomas van Aquino there, and he will now tell us a little bit more about inner peace and how we can find it, and how we can find it in the world. And Nico studied in Utrecht, and he studied in Jerusalem doing philosophy there. And our moderator today is Timon Idema. He is a professor at the TU in nanobiology, and he is also a lecturer at the Old Catholic Church in Delft. So he has the technical aspects and the ethical aspects for us today. And he will moderate this evening, and he will lead the conversation. And in the second part of the evening, we have the questions out of the hall, out of you, and he will moderate also that. And tomorrow he is the lunch lecturer. So if you think, oh, I really like this subject and I like free lunch tomorrow, please come in, and Timon will tell a little bit more about that tomorrow. I would like to welcome you to the stage now and give the word to Timon.
Glad to see so many people here. Thank you for the nice introduction. We were just discussing, we do not have microphones. Now we already noticed that most of you were very nicely sitting on the front rows, but if you can't hear us in the back, there are still a few seats empty here on the front row. And so if at some point you feel like this guy is talking too smoothly, too softly, come to the front row. With that, we agreed that we would start by some uninterrupted time for our guests to introduce themselves a little bit, especially in their relationship to the topic, reflect on what inner peace means for them. And given that our usual tack of approach here at TU Delft is to let our external guests go first with something like that. So Nico, I would like to ask you to start with giving your, 3 minutes of the time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. I like to be here, and I will just take it away with some thoughts on inner peace and where to get it from. And I would like to present 3 candidates. And the first is technology, or just things or stuff. And the second is silence, and the third is relationships. So just recently, I was not happy with how my earphones were functioning, and I noticed that it gave me a little bit of inner chaos or unrest. And then I started to look on internet to buy new ones. But then I realized, is a piece of technology going to make me happy, or is it going to give me inner peace? I don't think so. So this is my first opinion, which I want to share with you here tonight, that things, stuff, technology, screens, YouTube, Netflix, it's going to give you all kinds of experiences, and they also may be good experiences, but they will not give you the inner peace that your heart longs for. Then another candidate which I think is a more likely one to give you some inner peace, which is silence. Silence, maybe to be alone in a quiet place. If you go to a quiet place, maybe to walk in the mountains or in the forest, then I think you might find some peace. You will not have distraction from maybe your work or maybe your duties or your phones, or you have to leave your phone at home, of course, if you're going to walk in the forest. But my own experience has been that even when you just go for silence, you will learn something about yourself, but you will not, this is my personal guess, you will not experience the greatest degree of inner peace that you long for, that you could have. And then the third candidate is relationships. You know what happened? When I was struggling a little bit with these earphones, which were not functioning, at some stage when I said, let's just not buy new ones, but just do it with these ones I had. First I felt a little bit tense about it, but then I spoke about it with a good friend of mine, and I made a joke about it, and then I was much more at ease with the fact that I have shitty earphones. And if I go to walk in the forest, if I go walk by myself, what will normally happen is that my mind will start racing, and it will start racing just in circles around things that I worry about and everything. But if I go to the forest with a good friend, then what happens is, in the conversation with this friend, the things that I worry about, they much more easily come to rest. So therefore my suggestion would be that if we want to find inner peace in the midst of chaos, we rather find it in relationships than in either stuff or just mere silence. Last thing I would say about it, I am a Christian, a practicing Christian. So I do not only have relationships with other people, I also have a relationship with God. And the maximum degree of inner peace that I have experienced in my life has always been in my relationship with God. And I think the reason is that although people can be really good friends, but they do not have themselves the inner peace needed to give the other the inner peace that I really long for. God does have that, and therefore my suggestion would be that if you are looking for inner peace in this midst of chaos, you look for it in your relationship with other people, and primarily in your relationship with God.
Thank you, Nico. Very nicely in time. Brilliant. Lotte.
Yeah, I'm very impressed by your clear answer. I have to say, when I received this invitation for this evening, like inner peace in the midst of chaos, my first response was no, I don't have anything to say about that. Especially because in all this chaos that we're experiencing right now, but technologically, politically, environmentally, I find it very hard to find inner peace. But it also forced me to think about it, but I do have sources of inner peace. And I have learned about this, and yeah, it's good to formulate that out loud and share with other people. And I think some of it resonates with what you said, but I think for me, inner peace is feeling a connection to a greater whole. And you could say this is consciousness, something divine. I like to refer to it more as consciousness that we all share. And there was a period in my life that I felt very much struggling with this. Like I was addicted not to substances, but to getting confirmation from others. Like I was constantly striving to get that. And at some point I realized that my ego was too much of a big force there. I was being too attached to my ego. And once I realized that, and that it made me cling to certain things outside of myself, that in the long term gave me inner peace, because I could see through it. I could see that I was clinging on to things that were outside of my control. So this realization, this is what really helped me. And now also in the midst of chaos, I realized that the only thing that I can do is to try and act from this inner peace and act from a feeling of connection with other people, with nature, and with the wider consciousness.
Thank you. So, Nico, you already gave a very practical example of how you deal with this in your everyday life when your earphones are broken. or when you go into a walk in the forest, although that was, I think, a hypothetical one. Do you have practical things that you do to strengthen this inner peace, or to find this inner peace?
I meditate. Has been very helpful for me to do that every day, because it helps you take a step back from like the chaos of every day and to look at what's happening in your life and see that it's something that can be meaningful, but it doesn't define you. Because what defines you is being part of this larger consciousness.
So Niko, do you have a daily practice, or weekly ritual that you do? Do you take a weekly walk in the forest?
Well, one thing I do every day is I pray, which means I go to a chapel, ideally, or if I don't have a chapel, I just sit down somewhere where it's a bit more quiet. And I try to realize a bit more consciously that I am in the presence of God, and then I speak with God. And I speak with Him as a son speaks with his father. So for me, the foundation of my inner peace is to know that I am just a son of a father who is both very good, very powerful, has a plan with my life, with the life of all of us here, with the world, who does indeed let many things happen which should not happen, which are not good, but who somehow also always guarantees that if we, let's say, walk through this life with good intentions, looking towards the good of other people, towards the greater good of the community, then things will be well in the end. So I do that every day, and it helps me a lot. Yeah, and I do many other things, but you tell me if you want to hear more examples.
Well, maybe at some point, but you already hinted on this, but there's many things in the world. There's also the theme, but chaos in the world. And let's make sure first that we are on one page what we mean with this chaos. Yeah. You already hinted that there are many things which are not good, but what would you say is the chaos in the world? What's the current big problem?
Well, two things come to my mind. You asked it to me, right? Or,
yes.
Yeah. Two things come to my mind, and one I think is, well, I think both are very obvious in a sense, but one is obvious in the sense that the news is full of it. So there is war in many places in the world, and that's terrible. And there is also, at least in my opinion, it is quite clear that also the planet, just our common habitat, is suffering from some predicaments, probably due to how we treat it. So that is one thing which is obviously not in order in this world of ours. And that's an obvious thing because it's all over the news. But another thing which in a sense you might say is even more obvious or even more urgent for us, and that is if I teach, so I have many students, and I see all of my students, they struggle with the fact that the commercial world, but also the technological world and the social world, and all kind of things, they're just kind of trying to conquer or beset their soul with claims for your attention, for your time, everything. And people that do not have the experience that there are so many times where you can just be with friends, or something. There's always a phone, or there's always a deadline coming closer. So that's something where I just see, and I have it myself, but I have lived through it, and I am now happy to say that I find more inner peace. But I see around me many people that suffer from this chaos. So that's also something which, it comes very close.
Could I summarize what you say is that there's the external source, with the world, the wars, the climate change, but there's also a more direct personal, direct small circle relation type of chaos?
Yeah, but I don't think it's a distinction between external and internal. Obviously, let's say the state of the planet and wars at the end of the world is more external, but and you have less obviously influence and control over it. Theoretically, you have the possibility just to throw away your phone or to put it away. So but that in a sense also external. So, for example, in this country, since a few years, it is allowed for gambling companies to advertise in the public sphere. So now you can walk around the street and you see there people advertising on gambling. That's external. But maybe this is not your personal situation, but I know people who suffer from gambling addiction. For them, it would be much better, and they would really have a greater chance at inner peace if they would not be confronted with their addiction in the public sphere, which really just is a means for a company which already has enough money to make a little bit more money, and for the government to take some taxes out of it. So it would be my personal preference, if any one of you is planning to go into politics, please look into it.
I think a lot of the chaos that we see is resulting from society, so this is also societal force, but it's society where people are disconnected from each other, they're disconnected from nature, and as a result, ego becomes more and more important. So a lot of what we see happening with Trump, with other politicians, they're really very big egos that are constantly looking for conflicts, because conflicts is something that confirms the ego. They want to show how big they are, how grand they are, and they disregard everything in that path. So I think people that gambling sites are not good for us. But if we would have a society in which we are less focused on the individual and more on the community, we wouldn't be so susceptible to that. So it's also a way, how we deal with each other, but also, as I've experienced, something that we can find in ourselves.
This relates quite nicely, and I'm skipping slightly ahead to some of the questions we have, but on the question on whether inner peace is an individual thing, or is this also something that we could have as a community, or stimulate as a community? Is the chaos is certainly related to the community? Is the inner peace something that's yours alone? Or is this also something that can be bigger than yourself?
I think it helps to be in a community that cherishes inner peace and that offers you repertoires of action to achieve inner peace. So I do think community helps, but I think in the end, you as an individual, you're the only one who can really make it happen for yourself.
Nico.
Well, I think that Lotte is saying many sensible things, but I know that you also like us to disagree at least a little bit, right? So that we can have a bit of discussion. So maybe we think more or less the same, but we just put a different nuance. I do think that I see here a slightly different nuance. Because if I understand you correctly, you say inner peace is something which the community could be of help to find it, but in the end of the day, it's something you need to do for yourself. Well, first of all, as I already said, I think that true inner peace, the inner peace that we're longing for in our hearts, is fundamentally something that is only to be found in a relationship with somebody else, with another. So therefore, I do think that it is of the essence that you connect with the other to have inner peace. On a more practical note, why I would be critical of saying this thing of, in the end of the day, it is something you need to do yourself. So I think if you frame it like that, it could sound for people, or it could actually mean that there comes a moment when, as a community, or as a mentor, or as a teacher, or as a friend, you would say to the other person, well, I see that you still do not have inner peace. I have done my part, but you have to do it for yourself now. And I think you somehow kind of, you let the other person, it almost feels like you abandon somebody a little bit. I have many experiences with people who do not find inner peace, even though I try to help them. But somehow I still feel responsible from my part to be there for them, if it was just only to share with them their struggles and their inner turmoil. So I do think that it is important to underline the communal aspect, the relationship aspect of finding inner peace. That would be my
I think you can only really find inner peace in a relationship if you already have a stable basis within yourself. Otherwise, here I come again with the ego. It will get in the way. You might want to use the other person for something because you need, you feel you want to be loved and you can't love yourself, so you need the other person to provide that for you. you can't feel secure, so you want the other person to provide security. As long as you don't feel secure in yourself, you might always look to other people to provide something for you. And also with addicts, it's also well known that they have to hit rock bottom, really get to the lowest point before they can really get out of there. So sometimes I agree with you, you don't want to let people just abandon them and you feel responsibility, but sometimes that responsibility is stepping away.
Yeah. You want to say something? Or you want to say
Well, I'm curious because you were quite adamant about the point of not stepping away.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel this also comes from your worldview.
Yeah.
Where you feel that you are also not let go. Is that correct? Is this your worldview speaking? Is this your experience as a teacher speaking, or how would this also the question? But if you have this experience, how does this affect your inner peace? If there's a student who you cannot help.
Well, look. So I have experience from both sides, being the one, let's say, in need of inner peace and looking for it, not finding it, and being helped finding by other people, by God in the first place, by God and then by other people. And now I also have experience as being the one who tries to help people. So again, I think it's a matter of nuances. So I don't think we agree very strongly, because as you say, I also know that, at some stage you just realize that this person now has the responsibility, just needs to take a step himself. But if I may refer to what is probably the most famous parable of the New Testament, the one of the prodigal son, where you have this father who has two sons, and the younger son, he decides to just take his part of the inheritance, and he goes away to a far land, and there he just spends it all on bad things. And there you could say that is an example of where the father could say, well, he doesn't have inner peace, and I can do nothing for it because he decides to be there and everything. Yes, but the story also tells that father, or in any case it implies, because when he finally comes back, the father was there on the lookout, looking out for when his son was coming back. So what I see there is that this son, although he is far away from his father, he doesn't have contact with him. I think his heart tells him, my father has not abandoned me, my father is waiting for me, is desirous to have me back, and desires to help me whenever I would want it. So when we speak about looking for inner peace, or finding inner peace, I think it is tremendously important that there are people in the world who, in their deepest heart, they transmit to you the certainty that they care for you, even if you yourself don't care. And that is a way of, let's say, being open towards the relationship with the other that has, on my heart, has made a tremendous effect to realize that even though I was in the midst of chaos, looking out for pleasure in all kinds of things that were not really good for me, it was for me very important to know and then also to experience that there were people that still cared for me. And they did not take a stance where they was just saying, well, as long as you take this life, I don't care because I can't do anything anyway. And then if ever you want to come back, then I will see you. No, they transmitted to me this. And now I can say I have some experience, thanks to God, of trying to show this also to other people, and thereby being much more able to help them to open up to more self-knowledge, and then to take steps towards getting out of chaos and into inner peace. So yes, I do think that the relationship is essential, not only from the moment that you, let's say, have inner peace, but also in the process from chaos to inner peace.
So what you're saying is for yourself to be able to find the inner peace, you need a relationship.
Yeah.
And from that point, you can then help others.
The relationship is the beginning, the middle, and the end of the whole thing for me. Yeah. You could put it like that. Yeah.
So I think you would agree probably with a lot. Would you say that you can get inner peace also without this relationship?
I do think that relationships are the best way to find inner peace, if only because they are the best teachers. So they don't always need to be positive. They can also have a negative effect, but they teach you a lot about yourself and your vulnerabilities and your weaknesses, and that can help you grow. So I think you learn more from having maybe 7 failed romantic relationship than spending 7 years on an island somewhere and on your own. So in that sense, I agree. But I think that the ultimate source of inner peace is within yourself and not coming from the other. Also because I think it's healthier or stronger to not expect that from other people, because then you might become disappointed or angry or sad because of what the other person does. So also for that, I think it's better to rely on yourself.
Can I specify 2 things? Because I realize I need to specify 2 things because of what you say. I speak of relationships, giving inner peace, but obviously I need to specify because there are many relationships which do not give inner peace at all, right? So take for example the first time you fall in love. It doesn't give an inner peace at all, it gives the exact opposite. Or take examples where you have a relationship but then for whatever reason you end up in a fight or I don't know what, and it doesn't give peace at all. So I have to specify what kind of relationship do I mean. And I mean the kind of relationship that that should exist in any case. For example, between a parent and a child. So I just gave the example of a father and a child. Because what kind of relationship is that? It's a relationship of unconditional love. I love you no matter what you do, no matter who you are. I love you as you are. I also have a plan for you, so I see a future for you. But if you are slow or fast in pursuing that future, it doesn't matter, I love you. But that's the kind of relationship that I mean when I say I look for inner peace in relationships. So therefore, I might say you are already blessed if you have one such person in your life. If you have several, then you are very blessed. And I think you will very easily distinguish or recognize with your heart if you deal with somebody like this or not. So look for a person like that because it's really great. That I need to specify. And another thing I also need to specify. When I say that inner peace is to be found in a relationship, I do not mean exactly that it needs to come from the other person. So I agree with you there. It's not that I am going to give it to you. It's not that I'm going to give it to you. But it is in the relationship, so in the fact that we know of each other, that we love each other unconditionally, and that somehow we are just there for the other to be and to share things, good things, bad things, everything. So it's in the very relationship that I think the source of inner peace is to be found. And although it's probably really a matter of nuances, I do think, now that we've been speaking for some minutes, that we slightly disagree there. I do think that you would rather just situate it in yourself, and I would just sort of situate it not in the other, but somehow in the connection that the two of us have. Although I've also heard you use those words. But, well, I don't know, maybe that's for you to decide where we stand. But this I needed.
I'm not here to judge. But I have another question for you, because you talked about the relationship between parent and child, which is a very strong bond, and if everything is correct, if everything is right, then this is a very loving bond. But it's also a very specific biological bond. Now, earlier you talked about going into the woods with your friend, who's not your parent. Can you have such a relationship with a person who is not your parent or your child? Or maybe let's extend beyond your family, but it's also not your brother, but someone you've met. You could be your partner, but also just be your friend.
Well, if you just ask me a very factual question, I think I'm able to answer from experience, yes, because I think 2 or 3 of such people in my life. I gave the example of the relationship between a child and a parent, and that is an example. But obviously, it is an asymmetrical relationship. So I think I might also add that this is how ideally the relationship between spouses ought to be, between a husband and a wife. Ideally, obviously, if you're going to share your life together, you want to have another person who loves you as you are, but also kind of right, and in a unconditional way. But I do think that it is possible to have it also with other people. But as I said, so I think that God will provide each and every one of us with at least one such person, if you are willing to invest a little bit, right? So I mean, it's free lunch tomorrow, but there is no free good relationships to be had, because you have to suffer a little bit, you have to invest your heart, a little bit of vulnerability, a little bit of time, and maybe not even a little bit. So, but yes, I think it is possible to have it. But don't expect anything within 3 years of a relationship. So time goes by, right? And even if you have already many years of good friendship with somebody, either you might discover that it was not as good as you expected, or you might discover, when it really becomes a very difficult moment, that it was even more beautiful than you expected. So in fact, so in these past 2 years, I've had both these experiences with my 2 best friends from university. So one was not exactly what I thought it was, which was a little bit of a disappointment. In fact, it was a bit of rather a tragedy. We still talk and everything, but if you really expect somebody to be there for you in a moment which is difficult, and then you sense that the person regards the relationship as slightly more kind of in a transactional way than you thought, it's really painful. So if you do not want to have pain, if you equate inner peace with not having pain, by the way, then you should not come to me. Because I think that pain and to be heard and all these kind of things, they form an integral part of a good and a peaceful life. Yeah, I'm sorry to say it, but that's how I think the world is. And then I also had, with this other best friend of mine, I had the opposite experience, which was that, I was really impressed and very grateful to see that he was even in a difficult situation, which was a little bit tense. Also, he really put our friendship before other interests, which was great. Anyway, so I don't know what your question was, but you came to my mind.
The question was about whether you can find this kind of relationship outside the biological.
Yeah, so both.
I would like to ask Lotte the same question.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I think you can find it with random strangers even, like you might have a moment where you share something and you feel connected. You might share it with some friends sometimes and with some family members sometimes. I don't think it has anything to do with biological relationships. No.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Such a surprise. And then searching for inner peace. Many people search for inner peace, and they search it in many places. It may become something, and both of you hinted already at this, something transactional, something you do for me. How do we prevent that? How do you make your search for inner peace not something that exploits other people?
So for me, it couldn't be. You couldn't have inner peace while exploiting other people. That's not possible. Because if you begin from a start point of abundance, that you think, well, there's enough love, there's enough security, there's enough warmth for everyone, then it's not a zero-sum game, right? You actually, the more you share, the more you have.
Is that also how you view the world? That there is an abundance of love?
Yes, there is, but not many people can access it, and that's the problem. They feel cut off because of technology, because of the society in which we are, because of their own patterns of upbringing. Can be many causes, and it is there. People just can't reach it sometimes because of their inner blockages.
Would you like to connect to that?
I don't understand the question. Because I just cannot see an example in which my personal search for inner peace would exploit another person. So maybe you can give me an example and then I can answer.
Well, the example that was brought earlier, right? Actually by you, a student who is struggling with something and wants your help and is clinging to you for help. And that is having a detrimental effect on you.
But how? I don't have the experience that had a detrimental effect on me. So how is it going to have that effect?
Well, you might lie awake at night, worrying about the student, or you might be the student. This is
the only thing that I can think of and you tell me if I go in a wrong direction. So I know there is a rather, let's say, strong or dominant view of inner peace, which tells you that well, I must formulate it in this way, that tells you to cut off relationships or responsibilities that somehow give you anxiety, or that give you stress, or that give you all these kind of things. Of course, if objectively a relationship with another person gives you nothing good, and gives you only anxiety and stress and bad things, then it might be a good idea for your inner peace and just for your general well-being to cut off that relationship. But I have seen already several times in my life, and every time is one too often, whereby people, they convince themselves, or they are convinced by a coach or an I don't know what, that some relationship which they have with another person, it could even be a relationship of marriage, is somehow the source of their inner chaos or unrest, and therefore what they should do is just cut that off. Now I think that relationships that are somehow durable, that have gone on through time, they come with real responsibilities, with duties. And I think if you forsake your duties in your relationships, then you might experience a short time of inner peace because you no longer have to deal with the responsibility. But in the long term, I think your conscience will start to gnaw away at you, leaving you with more unrest than you started off with. In other words, please do not only count a kind of absence of worries or an absence of, but also count real obligations that you have to the people that are placed beside you in your house or in your family or in your, because it's part of life to fulfill your obligations. So that is not exactly exploiting, but that could somehow mean that your search for inner peace would really affect other people. Yeah, I have personal experience where it was my own brother, I'm afraid to say, who left his wife and his children because he was looking for inner peace, and that was terrible. It was really terrible. So
But I do think that some situations that you should turn away. There are people that have such negative energy and are so destructive that you can't help them even if they're family members. And I think in such cases it could be better to leave. Maybe you're afraid to leave, or you feel that it's not what community expects of you, but that's not that's not good for the other person nor for you. So I do think there's cases where actually you should leave.
As I myself also said in the beginning, so I recognize this, but the only thing I say is don't be tempted to think too lightly of your responsibilities. That's the only thing I think I would want to say there, because I have seen it too often that people they are convinced, they talk to themselves in a way whereby somehow they what's the word there in English? Hoe zeg je het Engels als je iemand ontslaat van zijn plicht?
Relieve of duties?
Yeah, dismiss or relieve you. Somehow they talk to themselves as though they were relieved of their obligation, in a way where if I speak with them later and I pinch a little bit, they realize, wait, I was lying to myself. I had this responsibility. And maybe it's the responsibility, in any case, not to act too abruptly, right? But to take more time, or to give the other person more space to change, or these kind of things. So that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think sometimes you're projecting some of your own struggles onto other people.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't help to just leave, because you will take that along with you, of course. but there's also cases where I think
Yeah.
it's better to leave.
So we talked a lot about personal relationships and your view in this. Of course, chaos, but also what you started with. There's also chaos at large. In the world, there's many things that are wrong in the world, and we all agree on that. You don't have to repeat it. How does this affect you? How does this relate to your inner peace? And how can we find inner peace if the world is in chaos and many things are wrong?
So I've also come from a tradition of environmental activism, and what you see there, the people are very idealistic and they want to change the world, and they have big hopes there, and of course you can never achieve that. You will always fail in some respect. So what I've seen there is people that cling to that perfect world or to their perfect world too much, they actually end up suffering. So in some sense it's very important, I think, to see what you can do in your own circle and in your own direct environment, and to be a force of peace there. So I strongly believe that if you can find peace within yourself, you can share that with your direct environment, and that will continue to have its effect. It's like karma, right? You do well and you meet well. So although I'm very concerned about what's happening in the world, I do see the limits of what I can do. So.
Did you agree?
Well, I was reminded when you posed this question of a little bit of a hero of mine, who is Mother Teresa of Calcutta. I don't know if this generation of students still knows this name. If you don't know the name, it doesn't matter. It was a very, very good woman who spent her whole life taking care of the poorest of the poor in a city in India. And she became rather famous even during her life, but this never, let's say, went to her head. She just continued her work. Once a journalist came to her and said, Mother Teresa, the world is full of agony and wars and everything, and what should we do about it? And she said to the journalist, I will tell you what we will do about it. I will start with myself, and you start with yourself, trying to live a little bit better. And I thought, I like very much that answer, because I cannot do anything about the war in Israel, where I live, even in that country, or the war in Ukraine, in the sense that I do not have influence on the direct, let's say, going on of that war. Therefore, there is a temptation to say, well, it's not my affair, and somehow I just need to disconnect from it. And I have friends who go that way, and I understand it very well. I understand it really well. Because you see the news, it's terrible, and you say, I can't do anything, so I just need to somehow let go and disconnect. But I rather go with the Mother Teresa way, whereby I say, I try to contribute to the betterment of this world by being myself a little bit better every day. I fail almost all of the days, I have to say, but at least I try. So this is for war, meaning if I end up in a tense situation with another person, I try to do a little bit better, my best, to resolve the situation, having in mind the war in Israel. When I have see on the street some rubbish, I put it away, thinking of the climate change. And of course, I know here are many bright people who know all about statistics, and I know that statistically it is completely negligent, but there's more to the world than statistics.
So could I just add, because I don't know if my answer just maybe sounded like I don't think activism is important, because I strongly think activism is important, but I do believe that it can only be really effective if it comes from a connection with what I said, wider consciousness, and is born from love and not from sort of a desperate strive to put your ideals on the world. So it should really come from some inner source, like Mother Teresa. She achieved a lot, of course, I think, because she was so connected with what we call the divine or whatever. But I think that's important starting position.
Yeah. I'm very curious, but could we do a show of hand? Who has heard of Mother Teresa? Oh, this is great. You need to say anything. All right.
That's maybe a reassurance. reassuring.
Very
reassuring
reassuring,
sign.
yeah.
So I've asked you quite some questions already. I'm sure there will be many more from all of you. So what we will do is we'll have a recess, but don't go away, because we also want you to think about this topic. And so our friends have put up a question for you to talk about with the people around you. Don't be afraid of them; they're usually nice. And we'll give you about 15 minutes. We'll come back, and of course we'll get into a discussion with all of you. But for now, let us thank our two speakers and have a short break. All right. So I hope you all had a nice break. You all had the chance to talk with your neighbors. I saw a lot of you do that, so that's great. Of course, you only talked about this question, I'm sure. We have another 45-ish minutes to get into discussion with our two speakers. And so I'd like to invite you, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. Go ahead. And then if you have a question to one of them specifically, that's possible. Of course, you can also have a question if you want to get this short.
Thank you. Thanks to the both of you for being here and having this conversation. My question is regarding, I think the essence of my question would be what inner peace is. Maybe that is a bit of a difficult question, but I was curious to how you would answer the question, how do emotions relate to inner peace? Because I heard you say a few times, like, there's also a part of struggle in inner peace, and to me, like, the first thought that comes to my mind would be, oh, if I feel uneasy, then I'm not at peace. But I'm curious how the both of you would look at that.
Given that we're talking about struggle.
I think it's a very relevant question. It's a very good question. Let's see what comes to my mind. So one thing is our feelings. And feelings can be nice, of course. I mean, to be very happy if we get to watch a romantic comedy. I don't do it very often anymore, but when I do it, it's just full with feelings. Which it's not peace, but it's feelings. Feelings can be not nice. If somebody passes away or if you get angry, and I think feelings can be they are most of the time a relevant indicator of what is going on inside you. But I don't think they have the final voice, or they ought to have the final voice. And I think they, in any case, they are not the only voice. I am reminded of a famous phrase by St. Augustine, where he says. My heart was restless until it found rest in you. And so you recognize the phrase. When I read that, and when I read the rest of his book, I have the impression that he is speaking to us of a sensibility of our heart, which is not exactly our feelings, not exactly our emotions, but it's a kind of deeper intuition about whether or not we are in tune with our destiny, whether we are on the way that we ought to walk. And I think a very general kind of intuition of humanity throughout all the ages and all the cultures is that within this life, the peace that we are looking for is never a peace of 100% unchangeable, nothing happening anymore. So somehow here below, we are always looking for an inner peace which is still dynamic. So I mean, still somebody could die, or you could lose something. So the inner peace that we are looking for, I would say, is the peace that you register, that you recognize with a deeper intuition about your life's destiny. Maybe you say, this is not an answer at all to my question, because you speak about some vague intuition that I do not recognize. But then I would have to say, well, I personally trust that each and every one of us has this intuition. And then I would come back to saying some things like, speak with somebody who knows you really well, tell them to ask you questions about how you're doing, and not to take, let's say, superficial answers. And then that other person will help you to find, let's say, this intuition about whether or not you are on your way. Something like that.
It's interesting because I would say something similar but with different terminology, like the destiny could be your connection to the greater consciousness. And I think feeling part of that consciousness is what gives you peace. And it also makes you realize that you are an observer of the feelings, of thoughts. Everything is something that, it's not what defines you, it's what you observe because you're conscious. And also painful feelings, once you start to try to ignore those feelings, you can't just ignore the painful feelings. If you start ignoring some feelings, you will start ignoring all feelings. And you will lose a connection to the world around you in a way. So I think it's important to remain open to all kinds of feelings and to really experience them, because that enhances your connection to the world. So just striving for positive emotions will somehow cut you off in a way. Also because the negative emotions are an indicator of something that's important.
Thank you.
I also want to thank you both for being here. I think it's interesting to talk about this topic. If I understood correctly, your perspective on how to find inner peace mainly comes from primarily from your relationship with God. And from your perspective, it really comes from inside as a starting point. I want to go a bit further and maybe isolate, where it comes from by drawing a scenario where someone is kind of captured in their environment, it's really bad, and no positive people are around for them. I'm wondering how both your approach would be in that situation for that person, and how to find inner peace in a situation where there's no peace at all.
So my answer would be to look for that peace inside yourself, because as I said before, I think if you have that energy in yourself, you can share it with your environment and you can influence your environment in a way. So you will create positive energy around you and in a way also hopefully impact other people. So that would be my response.
Yeah, so I mean, you paint a very dark picture, right, of a person who has an environment which just doesn't provide anything for a source of inner peace. And then, I would say something which is very, very similar to what Lotte says. You look inside, but you cannot give to another person what you don't have, but you can also not give to yourself what you don't have. So if you would be just looking inside yourself, you're not going to find it, because you don't have it. But, great, so we can speak about it later. But, where is God? Well, God is everywhere because He is God. Yes, He's everywhere, but He's not everywhere in the same way. So, one thing is that there was a time when He was walking around on this planet in a human form, Jesus Christ, 2,000 years ago. So then it was in a very special way here on earth. But there is another place where He is in a special way, which is in the depth of your heart. So if you reach there, you will find a voice. And if you are able to shut out, say, the distractions of the world, and to listen very carefully, it's not so easy. Why? Because there are two reasons why it's not easy. One, because there are just many distractions which will distract you from hearing the voice of God, and there's another reason, which is this: God loves you very much. He's very good, but also He's very merciful. But also, of course, He is the voice of your conscience. So He's also the one who will tell you, and then you will know that He is right, that you are doing things which you ought not to be doing, or thinking things which you ought not to be thinking. Same way with your father. If you have a good father, you are at the same time very much attracted to his love, but also somewhat scared, maybe, of his judgment, or what he's going to say. So I would say to that person, go inside, but not in quest of yourself, but in quest of God. And He will hear your cry. it may take 300 years for him to do something with it. Not because he is not able to do anything earlier, but because he judges it prudent to let you wait a little bit. You can think of a story which probably you know, which is the Exodus story of the Jewish people that had been living for 300 years under a fierce oppression of Pharaoh, and they were crying to God all the time. And only after so many hundred years he finally decided to liberate them. So I don't know if you're talking about yourself or a friend or just a hypothetical situation, but I tell you that I am absolutely convinced that God will finally hear your cry.
So you have two answers.
Well, thank you both for your answers. So I was wondering for Lotte, as a follow-up, like, would there be a stepwise approach to find an inner peace in that situation? Because I don't know if I understood or misunderstood, but I didn't quite find an answer to how you would find the inner peace and be able to project that then on others.
Yeah, so, well, a very ancient technique is meditation, of course, because that really helps, well, I've experienced that. It helps to take a step back from the immediate emotions and your immediate experience and to realize that although they're important and real, they're always passing and they're always temporary, so you don't cling to them. And doing that really helped me to find peace. So meditation, that would be my answer.
Concrete. We have two questions, so I'll go here first.
We've been discussing a lot about the internal side of inner peace, but I want to look external again. One of the reasons why I believe inner peace is difficult to find for young people today is that they have a view that the world is going to be worse off in the future than it is now, which is a bit different than it's been in the past 5 decades or so. In light of this negative view of the future, what advice would you have for those seeking inner peace and positivity moving forward?
Yeah, so I have children also, and I do worry about their future, so I've been asking myself this too. But one thing that helps me is that you don't know, right? You don't know if it's going to be bad or if maybe something positive comes out of this. Because that is what always happens. From negative, positive emerges, and the other way around. It's like two sides of the same coin. So you can't have one without the other. But I do think that some of the negative things we experience today can actually maybe help us grow as a community. Like for instance with AI, I find it very threatening, and it might undermine some of the things we find very valuable, such as art or philosophy or science, and yeah, the human agency might be taken out of that. But at the same time, it might help us ask, okay, what do we find really important, right? What is it that connects us to each other and makes us human? So, yeah, I hope something positive will come out of this.
What do you mean when you say that people are convinced that the world will be worse off in the future than it is now? Worse in what sense?
We can take many approaches to this. We can say climate is one example. We could say that economically is one example. Even though the world is becoming wealthier, it seems to be getting harder to exist in that wealthy world. To obtain the things that our parents and grandparents were able to obtain.
Yeah.
Those are two examples.
Yeah. So I think if I would let's say dialogue with somebody about this, I would first speak very long about what do you mean to be well off. I mean, I understand that I would not have the same possibility to buy the stuff that my parents were able to buy in the 90s because anything was possible and economic growth all the time. But I don't even want to buy all that stuff. I'm very happy not to buy all that stuff. And in fact, I don't think economic growth is a good thing.
Maybe I should be more specific in saying like housing, for example.
Yeah.
Something that is not not optional necessarily.
Yeah. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah. What would I say? I mean, look, if somebody is looking for a house, and he doesn't find a house, and he's really in a dire situation where he's just married and is getting a child, I don't know what. Obviously, I'm not going to just talk philosophy with him, because I mean that's just not nice. That's just a very, very difficult situation, and I recognize that. If it would be a brother of mine in the faith, someone who really believes in God, I would say to that person, look, try to worry less, because you know that God takes care of you, and it doesn't mean that He's always going to make your life very nice, but one way or the other, He will take care of you. So I would say that, and depending a little bit on what kind of relationship I have with that person, I would say it in a very kind of nice and encouraging way, or in a more kind of a fierce, strict way, and you just trusting God, depending on the relationship. That I would say, and but yeah, apart from that, I mean, yeah, totally you're right. We're gonna suffer more. What can I say? Let's smile like you do now, and yeah. There are many immaterial goods that are still to be had for people who suffer in a joyful way, whatever material, let's say, so hardship that they encounter. And you probably are able to give examples, as I am also.
Can I respond to this?
So, very briefly to that.
So, I mean, this reminds me a little bit, there's a philosophy from ancient Rome called Stoicism.
Yeah.
And it's a bit similar to what you're saying. It's like, trust in the divine order of things. Things are going to be better because of this divine order. There are things that are simply not under your control. So imagine I'm like a Roman guy living in 450 AD.
Yeah.
I have a family, I have a farm in Italy.
Yeah.
The Goths are crossing the Alps, and I tell my kids, there's divine order, it's probably going to be fine. And then the Goths, they march into Rome, they burn down Rome.
Burn down your own house.
There's divine order,
burn down your
it's all
wife.
going to be fine. And then at some point they come to my farm, they rape my wife, they kill my children. Like, no, there's divine order, it's all going to be fine. And at which point do you have to say, okay, maybe inner peace is not the ideal, it's not the highest goal? And it's going to relate to what he said, some of these things that we're seeing now are political decisions that have been made by other people, which can be reversed.
Yeah.
So at which point do we, say, okay, maybe we have to actually start fighting in for what we want?
Let me say two things. First of all, I'm not a Stoic. I am very far from being a Stoic, in fact. If you would invite a Stoic to speak with me, then we would have a real debate. Because a Stoic has a very different conception of the divine. A Stoic will teach you that whatever happens is good, because whatever happens is somehow just the emanation of a divine reason that orders all things. So the Stoic would indeed need to say, look, you don't understand why this is good, but this is very good. In fact, you give very terrible examples. So the fact that they are burning down your house now, you don't understand it, but it's just very good. I don't think like that. And God also doesn't think like that. So God sees the sin of the world, and He sees that all these terrible things that you mentioned, they are a result of the freedom and the sinfulness of human beings. So He suffers from it, and I also suffer from it. So I say then, God still cares for you, and He will help you finally. That's one thing. And then the other thing. So I am very far from telling you that you should not act, that you should not fight, that you should not struggle. You should. So all these terrible things that we're talking about, I personally am aware that my vocation in life is not to now take all my stuff and go to Ukraine or to Palestine, to Gaza, and to help people there. So I do it in little things. Well, if you feel called to do that, you would be doing a great thing. I think you would have to be careful that you would do it with the proper amount of humility, not thinking that you can solve all things or that you are the only one who has the right answers. But by all means, and obviously, of course, when people are coming to burn down your house, you are obviously not only, let's say, allowed, but you are even, I think, obliged to try to prevent them. Do we agree a little bit more now?
But I'm not saying that you are this. I didn't get the feeling that you were completely pacifistic in this. I'm just wondering that to me it seems, and I've noticed this in my own life as well, like if you take this attitude, like okay, I think you can cope with quite a lot as a human, like by these sort of reasonings that you can do in your own mind.
Yeah.
You can let your own life get a lot worse very fast by keep telling yourself it's all gonna be fine.
Yeah.
In the end, I'm not doing so bad. You
Yeah.
know, I'm just always wondering, like, how do you make the decision? Why shouldn't we go? Why should I go to Ukraine to fight, for example?
I was just speaking now with, what was your name? Eva. We were speaking about that intuition, right?
Yeah.
So you ask your intuition, what is my destiny? So if you start to speak with your friend and you start to think, man, I really think I need to go to Ukraine. And if your friends tell you are crazy, it's a very bad idea, but then you shouldn't go. But if they say you are crazy, but I think it's a very good idea, then maybe you should go. I don't know, why not, right? I mean, I only recently I met a person who did exactly that. In fact, he had a nice career. He was in real estate, but in fact, it's funny. Maybe that's why this example comes to my mind. But it was exactly this: a voice started nagging in his mind, saying, "You should do something about this war we just started now." It had to do also with the fact that they had some relations in Ukraine and Russia. And then he sold everything he had. He left it, and he started a foundation helping refugees in Ukraine from the war. So there you go. Other people did it before you. Why wouldn't you?
Beautiful example.
Yeah, no, it was really beautiful. I was very happy to meet that person.
So, I see your hand, but he was first.
Yeah, thank you. I had a question for you specifically. You say primarily inner peace should come from relationships, also from God. I think, as everyone, I think every Christian has dealt with some doubts about belief and faith and religion.
Yeah.
I think, and also maybe in other relationships that you have, right? They might disappoint you later,
Yeah.
or you have a hard time accepting a certain relationship.
Yeah.
How do you then overcome that and still try to find inner peace from that? It might be a combination between your two standpoints.
Yeah. It's a very good question. It's very relevant, of course. All of us have had disappointments in relationships. Today I spoke with a student of mine. It was very special. You don't know her at all. You will never know her. Therefore, I can give the example. And she told me I already know her for quite a while. But she shared with me now that she has had a difficult youth where she had a good parent, but she was not able to connect very much with her parents. But she had a best friend from elementary school onwards. But that best friend of hers ended up in a depression, and somehow in her mind changed something. And she said to the student of mine, she said, "Yeah, we have been friends for 12 years, but really, I think you have been a bad influence on me because of you, I have never been the person I really am." And she broke the contact. And that happened now a year ago. And I mean, for all we know, it's going to be the definitive. And we had a very, emotional almost conversation about it. Because she said, "Nico, how can I trust other persons after having this experience? I have known somebody for 12 years, and then all of a sudden, without any indications, she breaks off the relationship." And it was extra kind of what was very beautiful about the conversation I had with the student is that she knows how I think. And I always say to people, if you want to have an interesting life, trust people. And it's very scary, but trust people. Because you can always decide not to trust people and to be more kind of prudent, and then you will not have these disappointments. But so she knows that, and even so, she trusts me well enough to share this story and to say to me, what am I going to do? And what was I able to say to her? Not much, but I listened to her, and I said I would pray for her. She was happy. She's not a practicing Christian, but she has a little bit of background. So what I would say is, I acknowledge that it is very scary. It's very difficult, and I never want to, let's say, bagatelliseren of play down on how scary it is to trust. Also to trust God. But just my message to everybody would still be, even after you have the disappointing experiences, try to keep your compass on trusting relationships, because this is your life is going to be just so much more valuable and rich with experiences and joy and happiness and inner peace if you form trusting relationships with other persons. There's a very nice phrase in the gospel which you can pray in these moments. There's a man who has this is in the 9th chapter of the Gospel of Mark, if you want to look it up. There's a man, he has a son who is ill, and he goes to Jesus because he wants his son to be cured, obviously. But Jesus always asks before he cures somebody, do you have belief? Right? Do you think I can do this? And the man says, Lord, I believe, help me in my unbelief. So it's a bit of both. So he says I believe, but he says also help me in my unbelief. So he is somehow the the symbol of people who are struggling with doubts about the faith and everything. So maybe you can say that. Even in a relationship with another person, right? You can say, you know, I trust you, but help me to trust you because I find it difficult, something like that. I don't know, I could speak hours about this because I actually do that in my daily life, but I will
just
leave it here.
add something to that, because I think what people have disappointed me also, of course, but what I found very liberating is to take a compassionate stance towards them, right? And to see where their behavior is coming from their side, and to not see it necessarily as a reflection on yourself, but as something that in their life they needed to do that. And you still love them when you see that. And that, I found that very liberating, I have to say.
Can you, well, it's a question to both of you, but can you remember or imagine something or a situation that happens which would not only disrupt your peace really badly, but like make you lose it forever?
Well, also an answer.
Yeah, because maybe I can elaborate a little bit more. Because for example, for me, for you, Lotte, it's a bit like unclear still to me how exactly you cultivate that peace with the meditation, but still, or like you say, look within yourself. But that's why I kind of like thought of this question to like try to understand that more, because you know, maybe I don't know, maybe that gives you a bit more of the direction to my question.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, no, I think very, very bad things can happen which will disrupt you a lot, but I do also think that from any bad experience, new positive things can emerge. Like the Buddhists say, no mud, no lotus, so the lotus always grows in the mud. So you need to, everything bad that happens to you can be transformed into something positive. And what's really crucial is that you see that you don't depend on outside things like recognition from other people. Even well, love is very important, but you can still be a worthwhile person without romantic love, for instance. So you don't need to strive to get these external confirmations of who you are. You're already good as you are because you have the divine force inside of you. So you don't need outside circumstances to create that. So you can be comfortable, I think, in very dire circumstances.
Do you think you would be?
No, I don't think I would be, but I think you can.
So it's an ideal.
Yeah, it's an ideal, yeah.
Right now. So you were.
No, yeah, it's fine. I thought maybe you can also elaborate.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead. In a few sentences.
A few sentences. He knows me already, yes? Look, if for whatever reason, I cannot imagine now why it would happen, but if I would turn away from my relationship with God, turn away from my relationship with the people that care for me and that love me, and if I would persevere in that rejection, I am quite certain that I will never find inner peace again in my life. Not in this life and not in the next. And I know that it's possible, therefore I try to keep a good hold of it. I am able.
Thank you.
I'm still a bit stuck on the transactional bit of inner peace. And I'm going to be a bit materialistic here, but is it more of an infinite resource or a finite resource? And if it's infinite, is it something that builds up over time, or is it something that just is there and just pops into existence? And if you have it, can you also lose it again? By example, by sharing it with other people. If that somehow makes sense.
Yeah, so I think the inner peace that you can feel, you could never lose it by sharing it, and it's infinite, and it's always been there. So it's not, it's a source, is that an eternal source? Yeah, and we're all part of it.
I'm going to add a little follow-up to that. You said, if I'm not mistaken, earlier in the discussion that you should be aware of the people that are very negative, and that in some extreme cases you should distance yourself from them.
Yes.
Why, if it's an infinite resource? What's the purpose?
So it relates a bit to your question now. So you, in any situation, I think you have to look very carefully what is actually happening there. And so that is accepting a situation, to me, is not just let it happen and not do anything, but accepting it means seeing clearly what's in front of you, and then decide what your most reasonable course of action is. And sometimes that means you can improve the situation with a person, but sometimes you also have to realize, okay, I can't change the situation, I have to remove myself from it. And that person might be disconnected from inner peace, the source that I think is available to all of us. But as I said before, sometimes our egos get in the way, and some people's egos are very hardened and rigid, and for them, yeah, it's hard to find an opening.
Okay. And for you?
Well, so I recognize that this, we have already gone through it, but this is indeed a point where we disagree. I would rather stay with that person and suffer than distance myself from it, because I think distancing myself from it, even though it could, let's say, gain me a temporary inner peace, because I am not with a person who is very egoistic and very close off everything. I know that, but I think I thereby consciously cut him off of a real opportunity to find inner peace in a relationship with myself. So I rather stay and suffer it, even though staying means not doing many things, because I mean, if I'm not able to do anything, I will not do anything, but at least, so the concept of distancing there is, and I understand it, and maybe I will end up in situations where I say, if only I would have taken the advice of Lotte, but this is what I would say, yeah. And to your question, look, I mean, are you a Christian?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so is God infinite?
I think so.
I think so too. Is he eternal?
I think so.
Is he a source of good?
Yes.
There you have your answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, no.
I see you've got two hands actually here, but you also have your hand up.
Maybe this is just a more clarifying question. As we come here to this idea of trying to find inner peace, is inner peace the ultimate goal from your perspective, or is it just the outcome of a different goal?
So I think if we find inner peace, then all other good things will emerge from that. So
it's the first thing that you go for.
That's where it starts. Yeah, for me.
I love this question. I like it very much. So somebody already said it. I like to read Thomas Aquinas, a medieval philosopher and theologian, and he also asks these kind of questions. So I like it. I would say no. If my final goal is to be with God forever, that's my final goal. another way in which the tradition will formulate it is to behold God face to face, right? To look at Him, to look Him in the face. And the inner peace, if you ask the question in this way, I would rather view it as a fruit of this eternal relationship with God, rather than the other way around. I would never say, I would like to be with God because then I will have inner peace, and that's what everything is about for me. It's not. But it's just something which I know that it will flow forth from a relationship with God.
That's interesting. I think what you mean with God and I call the divine is somehow overlapping and somehow also not. Maybe because inner peace and the divine for me are the same thing. And for you, I think there's something else still that is more external to people.
Thank you. Also in the back, yes.
Do you think that active daily social media use can coexist with
Very practical question.
I think so, yes. It's possible. So in that sense, I don't think technology determines us. But if you use social media every day, I think it will probably make it harder for you to remain peaceful. So it's an interaction. But yes, if you are very strong and self-centered and have inner peace, nothing can really get you out of that.
What's your name, if I may ask?
Emily.
Emily. Nice to meet you. Emily, do you long for inner peace?
Yes,
I also do. Emily, do you use the social media every day?
Almost.
Almost. Do you think it contributes to your inner peace, or rather it does not?
I think it does.
It does not. Okay. Therefore, I advise you, Emily, not to ask such general hypothetical questions, or whether it is possible for social media use on a daily basis to coexist with inner peace. But I would rather advise you to draw a lesson from your very own personal experience every day, and tune down a little bit on your social media use with a view to increasing the inner peace of your life. And then maybe one day you will find somebody who will give you the magic key of how these two things coexist. But until that day, let's just do with what we have.
I was wondering if there are some things that by definition do not coexist with inner peace. And I could think of this as an example because it's created to be constantly updated about what other people are doing.
Yeah.
It also brings comparing your own life with other people's lives, and are there some mechanisms or some things in life that by definition are not a great match or cannot coexist?
You want to say something?
Yeah, well, addiction, I think that's really something that doesn't go well with inner peace. And you're right, these technologies have been developed to be addictive. But some people might be more susceptible to that, to others. So I think it's also part of who you are and as a person, to what extent it has a bad effect on you. So if you are susceptible to addiction, then maybe it's not a good idea. But yeah, I think it's in theory possible to have a healthy relationship also with social media. I think. I'm not on social media myself, I have to say.
Yeah. You ask whether there are things which by definition, let's say, threaten or even just take away your inner peace. Are you a Christian, Emily? Sort of, halfway? Okay. Well, so the one thing is sin. And when I say sin, I do not just mean having sex before marriage or these kind of things, but sin could also be, for example, a lack of trusting that God has created you in a way that is really good. And that can happen, for example, if you look at 5 other people who post things on social media, and then you think about yourself, and you say, I'm a terrible person because I don't have all these things. But that could be a sin, or a lack of gratitude towards God. So sin is the only thing, if you ask me, that will by definition break down your inner peace. But that means that also everything that everything that poses to you a real temptation to sin will, maybe not by definition, but somehow by kind of, right, by tempting you, be an invitation to losing inner peace. And I think that social media, of course, people always say your telephone and social media, it's not per se bad, and I agree with that. But I think in practice, in our everyday experiences, it presents us with many temptations, especially of these types of sins, where we just lose ourselves. We just lose the estimation of ourselves. We lose time with other people who are really besides and everything. And that's why I understand the whole argument of it's not by definition bad, but I think for all practical purposes, social media and technology, for many people in their lives, it really do have a bad influence. And that's why I might almost just say to everybody here, I encourage you to drastically break down or diminish or tune down your use of electronic devices. Okay. Yeah, I know.
So you're going to have the last question, because later questions maybe will still be around, but then we're going to wrap up. But yours is the last.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering, I think I'm mainly focusing on the Christian perspective. Do you think that one can try to do too much good, which could destroy their own inner peace?
That's a very good question. Yeah. The answer is yes and no. It depends on what we mean with good. So God does a lot of good, but you're not able to do that because you're not God. But the primordial temptation of man is that he wants to be like God. Now, you can want to be like God in a bad sense, but you can also want to be like God in a good sense, where you say, I would like to do as much good as God is doing. And there you have maybe a good intention, but it's bad, right? Because it's a sin of pride. Pride means that you let's say you account to yourself something that doesn't belong to you, because it belongs to God. So if you mean that, when you say, is it possible that it is actually bad to want to do a lot of good, then I would say yes. If, however, you just mean, I would like to do within the, let's say, within the scope that God has thought out for me, of my life, within that domain, within that limitation, I want to do as much good as possible, even though it costs me suffering, then I would say it is not possible to do too much good. It will be possible to do so much good that it will actually hurt you. But if you would come to me and ask me, Nico, is there something wrong with this? I feel hurt, or I'm very tired because I do so much good. I would have to speak with you very long to see whether you stay within that limit. Because maybe I will see you didn't. You try to do more than is your share. But if you remain with you in your share, then I will tell you, way to go.
That also, I'm going to hand over back to Koen, who is somewhere in the back, but of course not without asking you to join me in thanking lectures.
Well, thank you very much for your interesting talk. Also, people, we want to materialize our taste, so we have a little something for you and for Lotte as well. So you can get a nice look and
thank you.
good glass of wine and find some inner peace with it.
Are you telling me the inner peace is to be found in this bottle?
Yeah.
We can talk about it later. For all of you guys, tomorrow we have a lunch lecture, so it's free lunch, and Timon will deep dive a little bit more on this topic, and the day after Timon will talk a little bit about how we can find inner peace in God. So that's the rest of the week, so please join us. It will be at Civil Engineering in the halls F and G, but all the information is also on Instagram and also on this slide, so if you want to take a picture you can do it now. Next up is landmerk. Nico, you want to tell us something about it, right?
Yeah, very shortly. So 10 years ago with two friends I started an institute of education where we offer courses where I do basically just this. So I was just now speaking with you and with Eva and with Emily, and to spend some hours just looking at the big questions of life, speaking about it more. It's more dialogue than here, of course, because here you were with 50 people and we have 2 speakers. But with 10 people, I am a teacher, but there are also other teachers. Usually we also read a book together to get some inspiration. It could be Plato, it could be the Bible, it could be anything Thomas Aquinas. So I did not want to leave here without letting you at least know that this exists. So if you say I like this, please you can look up the website and see if there's something which you like.